Welcome back to Royals Weekly. I am your host, Marcus Mead, and joining me as always, a man whose childhood dream was to be both the captain and Tennille, my brother Mike.
Hey, love will keep us together. Let's get honest, though, for a second, people. Two difficult questions that nobody wants to ask. Was the captain doing anything in this duo? I think Tennille was really carrying that show. And then after that, also, who made this man a captain? Is he a captain? Like,
is
Colonel
that an
Sanders
official rank?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think Colonel Sanders' rank is an official rank. I think there was some sort of it's not. Is that an honorary?
Somebody
thing?
Just like I think like in the South back in the day, they would just call people colonel. I don't think he was actually a colonel of anything.
All right.
So yeah, Captain Crunch. The captain is a captain like Captain Crunch is a captain. Okay. So
hey, that
Tennille,
man served with honor. Okay,
hey, Tennille, you got it, girl. Okay.
Yeah.
Captain, quit riding coattails. All right.
Okay. All right. We'll
do something on your own.
We'll hear from somebody's lawyer here before too long. On this week's episode, though, we will discuss what has been an unspeakably insane week from the Kansas City Royals. We're going all the way back. What's weird is a lot of drama, a lot of excitement. It kind of feels like last week was a hell of a year. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
It's been – I think back to like, well, what are all the things we need to cover? And I'm like, the Drew Waters trade, did that happen this decade? It feels like so long ago.
It feels like a month ago.
Oh, it's nuts. But yes, that did in fact happen within this week. We're coming to you a day late a little bit because we were covering the draft with Royals Farm Report and Kansas City Sports Network and all those guys. That's another thing that happened this week, along with a billion other things. But man, it has been quite the week, hasn't it, Mike?
2 series, the draft, the drama over vaccinations and getting into Canada, the comments by Whit Merrifield, the Waters trade, the speculation on trades for other guys. I mean, yeah, it felt like a month.
It has been quite a week, and so we'll try and catch you up on all that stuff. We'll try and dig into each one of those things to some degree. We'll also dig into the results of this 2022 MLB Draft during our Spotlight segment before previewing the series, because there's going to be more baseball coming up here starting Friday, and so we'll try and preview the series of the Rays and the Los Angeles Angels.
Los Angeles, yeah.
See how crazy it's making my mind right now? But anyway, let's dig into some baseball. We'll start last week talking about roster news. We'll try and go chronologically because there was a ton of roster news last week. We'll start with that Drew Waters trade. The Royals traded their 35th pick in the 2022 MLB Draft to the Atlanta Braves for Drew Waters, Andrew Hoffman, and C.J. Alexander, 3 prospects, one of whom in Waters was a top 50 prospect at one time. Hoffman was just drafted in 2021, has had really good success in the minor league so far, and then C.J. Alexander is a little bit of an older prospect, 26-year-old in Double-A, sort of a lottery ticket. Mike, how do you feel about that trade? People were excited about it when it first happened, maybe got a little less excited when the shine wore off and they were sort of sad for losing that 35th overall pick. How do you feel about it?
After seeing some of the guys the Royals took in the draft, I kind of am even more liking it because you and I have said this. If you had gotten Waters with that 35th pick or Hoffman with that 35th pick, you'd be ecstatic. You got both of them. And so you're not going to get guys that are that advanced at that 35th pick. They're going to be just as big a gamble or more of a gamble, really, than both of those guys have been. Drew Waters has at least shown it in A-ball. Right, Hoffman has shown it in A-ball and been successful at that level. There's no guarantee a guy that you get at 35 is even going to show it at A-ball. So, I mean, let's be honest. We took Asa Lacy top 5. Has he really shown anything in the minors? I mean, he's been hurt a lot, but you never know. So I'm a big fan of the trade, and I've been saying that the whole time. And then, Alexander is kind of a throw-in, kind of a lottery ticket, but, he's a guy that if you'd taken him in the 5th round and said, hey, here's the power that he has in his bat, and he's something to dream on, you'd be okay with that. So, yeah, I'm totally all for it.
Yeah, I think sometimes people are just too excited by what is unknown. They can dream on a 35th overall pick. It's harder to sort of get excited about a guy when they tell you, hey, he hasn't really hit yet at the upper minor league levels. He's sort of a prospect who's lost a lot of status like Drew Waters has. Well, yeah, but this is a trade specifically designed to lean into the strength of your hitting development. So you get a guy like Drew Waters who is very, very capable of being an everyday center fielder, very good glove in center field, who, if his bat comes around, if you can teach him a better approach, if you can help with his launch angle, could be a not a perennial all-star. Well, I mean, I guess the tip top of his ceiling is sort of an all-star, then yeah, you got to be excited about that because the power is there in his bat. He hits the ball hard enough. He just needs to stop striking out so much, make some more contact, and hit more line drives. Guess what? Drew Saylor's great at doing that for guys. So if Drew Saylor can turn him around, you have a really, really good player in Drew Waters. And, oh, yeah, Hoffman might be a back end of the rotation guy too, you know?
And there's some people who like Hoffman better in that deal.
There are people who think he's really the centerpiece of this deal. Now, the Royals have said that they view Waters as the centerpiece, but Hoffman has a lot of prospect status right now as well. A guy who really pitched well in high A and looks like he could really be a solid back end of the rotation piece, and a guy who has much better command than a lot of guys in the Royals system. And I think they're looking and ready for a guy who throws strikes, and that's his type of thing. Not tremendous stuff from Hoffman, but he's got a little bit of deception to his delivery, and he throws strikes. And I think they're really ready for a guy who throws strikes in this system. And so really happy with the trade. We don't know what these guys will end up being, but we'll see. I think there's a little more certainty with these guys than with a guy at the 35th overall pick who may never even make it to the upper minors.
Ian Ritchie was the 35th overall pick. Ian Ritchie, a guy that I liked, a high schooler out of Washington. So just take a look at what he does going forward. He's got a lot of potential. So I don't want to say that he's going to be bad or anything, but who knows? You just never know with a high school arm or anybody that you're going to get at 35. So I'm completely fine with that.
The news of the Drew Waters Andrew Hoffman trade got relatively quickly swept off the front pages for the Royals when their series with Detroit ended, and it was announced that they would have 10 players on the restricted list who were unable to enter Canada because they had not been vaccinated. Those 10 players: Brad Keller, Brady Singer, Dylan Coleman, Andrew Benintendi, Whit Merrifield, Cam Gallagher, MJ Melendez, Kyle Isbell, Hunter Dozier, and Michael A. Taylor. Just saying that list makes me realize how long that list is. And so you're talking about a team that I think no other team before that had more than 4 guys on the restricted list who were unable to enter to Canada. The Royals had 10. That was shocking news to a lot of people, angered quite a few people, and then comments from players like Whit Merrifield did not help things. He seemed to throw gas on the fire, suggesting that he would get vaccinated maybe, or would reconsider getting vaccinated if he were traded to a contender and needed to go to Toronto to play in the playoffs and things like that. Mike, just tell us your take on that whole drama, that whole situation there.
This is the only thing I'm going to say about this, because you and I have been talking about it on Twitter and in other arenas and things like that. As a group, okay, when the idea that we had a vaccine against COVID came out, the idea was that, hey, this is something that you can do for your family, for your community, for your country to help end this nightmare, right? You can do this one simple thing. It's not like World War II. We weren't asking people to start working into factories or growing freedom gardens or rationing sugar or anything like that. All you got to do is get this shot. And these guys all chose not to do that, right? And so I don't know why we're necessarily surprised when they're not willing to do it for their teammates, right? Like if you want to think of that, and I think a lot of people see that as a selfish move, right? And I've heard this so much, how do you not stand up for your teammates and go do this because you're dedicated to winning? And I understand that completely, but they weren't willing to do it for their family. They weren't willing to do it for their community, their country. Why would they be willing to do it for their coworkers? So some people I think are very angered because they see it as a selfish move. And a lot of people are seeing it as a selfish move because they're letting down their teammates or maybe the fan base. But, think about what it was when it was, hey, we might be able to slow down this pandemic or whatever. So, I wasn't surprised that the number was that high. There were some guys I was surprised on the list. I wasn't surprised at Whit Merrifield's comments either. And that, I've never, and you put it really great. You said the other day on Twitter, we don't know any of these guys. And so I don't ever sit back and think, man, he's a swell person, because then you get crushed, right? And so They say never meet your heroes, right? That's why none of these guys are my heroes. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, that's it was really disappointing to see, but exciting. And we'll talk about why it was exciting here in a second.
Yeah, so that was the big point that I sort of made on Twitter is because immediately after Whit Merrifield came out with his comments and people were very upset and all that sort of stuff, rightfully so to some degree, Nicky Lopez came out and was saying, well, I'm ready to step up and be a leader for these young guys who have to come up and play and that sort of stuff. And everybody sort of moved all their affection and affinity for Whit Merrifield and placed it on to Nicky Lopez. He's like, oh, I love to see that. He's such a leader, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're doing the same thing you did with Whit Merrifield. It's like you thought you knew this person when in fact you do not know this person. You don't know Nicky Lopez
any of them
any more than you know Whit Merrifield, right? And so what we need to understand is that like if you disagree with their decision, if you agree with their decision to get vaccinated, either way, you do not know this person and you can't know this person. All you can know is the image that they show you. Okay. Occasionally they may say something that, you disagree with, or they may do something that you really love. Either way, it's all a very filtered, very manufactured persona that you're getting fed. And that's why people sometimes ask me, well, why don't you guys have like players on the show? Why don't you interview coaches and play? This is why we don't do that, right? We don't interview players and coaches because we aren't interested in their version of who they are. We're just interested in the play, right? We just care about what they're doing on the field. We just care about those sorts of things. That's what interests us more than anything. I'm not here to pass judgment on those 10 guys, but it was interesting to get to see some guys come up and play and that sort of stuff. But I mean, you also aren't immune, just like you're not immune from COVID after you've not been vaccinated. You're not immune from criticism once you make that decision and then very publicly sort of have no choice but to address it. And so it is what it is. We've moved on. People were excited for that. I think people will forgive and forget and all that sort of stuff. It's all baseball. Nobody's going to really hold them to the fire or anything. And some of these guys are going to be gone anyway. But, it is what it is, and we're moving on, I think.
And I think an important thing to say there is some players can put exactly who they are out there. They can do that. The problem is you can never know what is them and what is the manufactured them that they're letting you see or that their publicist has decided to tell them to be or anything like that. So, we all love Salvador Perez. I love Salvador Perez. The image that I've ever seen of Salvador Perez is that he's a wonderful person. But if it comes out tomorrow that he's a terrible person, you're going to be like, oh, man, you're going to be crushed when you shouldn't be. Deshaun Watson's the greatest example, right? Everybody loved Deshaun Watson in the Houston community because he did so much charity and so many things for that community. Well, then it comes out that Deshaun Watson is probably a scumbag. And it's like, hey, what do you can't fall for it every single time. Right. Exactly. You got to realize what you're seeing is manufactured in many, many cases. And so
not just by the players themselves. Not just by the players and teams themselves. It's by a media machine that just loves these narratives, right? They love the, he's such a good person narrative. And it's like so many well-worn narratives and archetypes are leading us to believe that these people are, saints and just exceptional young men and young leaders. And it's like, no, like it doesn't matter what they say, that it's easy to say lots of stuff. And so just, focus more on the play, focus more on what they're doing on the field, and just try not to care whether or not, they're, and I don't mean that in a callous way. We should care about victims of crimes. We should care about all that sort of stuff. We should show them compassion.
And we should appreciate the work that they do in the community. That's great.
Exactly.
It's great that you're doing that. Whether it's
But don't let that set a narrative in your mind that this person is ultimately, who you think he is, because you have no idea. And I have no idea. Mike has no idea about most things. So, it's fine. No. Those 10 players were replaced by another 10 players, 10 minor league players. Some of those minor league players include Freddie Fermin.
It's like a freaking little league basketball game where you bring 5 out and put 5 in.
It's time for the B team, guys. Let's get us some playing time. Freddie Fermin, Sebastian Rivero, Nick Prado, Michael Massey, Mikael Garcia, Nate Eaton, Brewer Hickland, Angel Zerpa, and Carlos Hernandez all made it up to the major league level to play in that Toronto series. Gabe Spire was also activated from the IL in the middle of that Toronto series, and so was Josh Staumont. So those guys ended up – I don't think we saw Spire in that Toronto series. We did see Staumont once.
So. Yeah.
But it was cool to see those young guys, and fans really got excited, especially after that first win, to see the young players play, to get up and see their energy. Yeah, they were making mistakes, but they were also doing some cool things. And so fans were excited to see a lot of those guys, especially Nick Prado and maybe even Nate Eaton a little bit. I think fans were kind of excited to see him hit. Mike, what do you think about how those young guys and what you saw from them?
It's friggin' awesome, man. Seeing Nick Prado get to that high fastball and take it out, seeing Nate Eaton hit that home run in front of his parents in Toronto, and play a pretty solid center field, which I was a little bit skeptical about for him but he looked pretty good to me. To see Michael Massey collect a few hits, it was really great to see that. And yeah, when you're talking about you get put in a situation like this to get something out of it, to see Angel Zerpa throw a decent game when he got the start, it was just really cool. And I think the excitement that you saw in the dugout when those things were happening, when Vinny hits that home run in extras to give them the lead, even though ultimately they lose the game, the excitement and the energy that's going on the bench, or every time somebody gets their first hit in Major League Baseball and guys are going nuts, it's really good to see that life and that energy. What it means is those guys that you and I and a lot of other people have been calling to be traded, now you don't think it hurts that much on the field to see that. Do you really think if Michael A. Taylor gets traded, it's going to mean that much of a difference on the field now? Or I know Benintendi's been a great offensive producer, but that team looked as competitive as any team we've put out there this year. And they were making mistakes, that is for sure. And they still looked as competitive against a very good team. So, yeah.
Tell me that Michael Massey couldn't produce as much as Whit Merrifield right now. I think he could. I think he definitely could. I think he could play just as good as second base for sure. And then I think he could produce roughly what Merrifield has up to this point. I know Merrifield's gotten hot. He's like a 116 weighted runs created plus in the last 220 at bats or something like that, 220 plate appearances. But yeah, I'm not convinced that this team of young players, if they were brought up and so forth, couldn't be just as good as a team that has Andrew Benintendi, Michael A. Taylor, and Whit Merrifield on it. And so we'll see moving forward how quickly those guys are traded, if they're traded, and all that. I don't want to sort of put the cart before the horse here, but let's talk a little bit about the week overall. The Royals went 4-4. They played 8 games in the 7-day week last week. That brings their overall record to 36-56. They're hovering right around 20 under 500 all the time. They win 3 of 4 from Detroit. Take a few steps forward. They lose 3 of 4 to Toronto. They take a couple steps back. It's always hovering right around that 20 under 500 mark. Mike, you mentioned that you really like to see the young players and the way they look. We did see the sort of excitement and the flip side of that, the mistakes. So you saw things like quite a few defensive mistakes out there, especially from Bobby Witt Jr., who I'll talk about a little bit later this week. You saw some base running mistakes from guys like Brewer Hicklin and things like that.
Prado got picked off at first in that
Prado
that
gets
game
picked
too.
off. It's some small things that very much look like young people mistakes, young player mistakes, but it was an exciting brand of baseball. It was fun to see that these guys can compete at that level because you're right. They were in all of those games. They give them a better bullpen. They win 2 of those games because Payamps blew that one in the 10th. I mean, that was not on the young players. They put themselves in position
Didn't even
to win.
record an out.
No. And they were 2-2 going into the 8th or 9th inning of that last game of the Toronto series, and the bullpen blew that one as well. And so, a competent bullpen gives them at least a split, and maybe 3 out of 4 from Toronto from this young team. Some of that was good starting performances from Chris Bubich, a competent performance from who pitched in that third
Zerpa.
game.
Zerpa added a decent start.
They won that game.
That was the one they got.
Maybe it was Daniel Lynch. Daniel Lynch, it wasn't a great start from him, but he did enough. And then, the bullpen was okay for a little while. And so, we had some good-looking performances from young players this week. So, Mike, tell us about a young player that you really liked to see hit this week.
Well, he's not super young, but
he's pretty
Edward
young.
Olivares, he's pretty young. Edward Olivares continues to be a guy that they're putting now in many different spots in the lineup against lefties. Sometimes he was leading off in Toronto and things like that. It's really weird. I still don't know if he's going to be an everyday guy in the outfield, but boy, I would love him as a platoon guy. Like he kills left-handed pitching. And so I think he's got to be some kind of a bat for you in the future. He went 6 for 21 this week with 2 walks and 4 RBI. 2 walks for him is actually pretty good for a week. And so if his eye lately has been a little bit more, his approach has been a little bit more patient recently. So he's been taking a few more walks. And if he can continue to do that, the value of an Edward Olivares is now through the roof because he still hits line drives like crazy. The guy really hits the ball hard, and that's very valuable. I don't know if he'll play every day, but you have to at least get him in some sort of platoon situation where he's the kind of guy you want to get 300 to 400 at bats in a year.
Right, and he's the type of dude who, I love seeing him in the leadoff spot because it looks like that encourages him to be a little bit more patient at the plate, to use his eye better just to get on base and draw walks. He looked really good in the leadoff spot there. He's an interesting guy in part because you might be able to trade him to a team that values defense a little bit less if you're really convinced that guys like Tyler Gentry will come up and be fine, that maybe Kyle Isbell will be good. They have some guys in the outfield. They just drafted Gavin Cross. If you think, well, Olivar's might be a little surplus and we prefer a better outfielder, a better defensive outfielder, and we have no place for him at DH, you might ultimately trade him to a team that values defense a little less in the outfield or plays in a small outfield ballpark, and you could get a lot for him in return, because you're talking about a guy who's right now has an OPS over 800 and has looked very competent at the plate. Teams need offense. Guys can hit. If guys can hit, they can play. And so if you can find a place that you might be able to send him, you might get a lot in return, including some pitching, which the Royals will ultimately need. They're not just going to be trading like veterans and guys on, whose contracts are up. They're going to have to trade some guys, maybe prospects or something like that, for established pitching. We'll see if Edward Olivares is on that list, because they typically value better defenders in the outfield than he is. But great to see him hit this week. I'm going to talk about another guy. He is definitely a young guy. I'm talking about Nick Pratto this week. I thought he really showed out really well in Toronto. He only got to play 4 games, obviously, but he went 4 for 14 with 1 double, 1 home run, 1 walk, and 4 strikeouts. You just saw a lot of really professional plate appearances from Nick Pratto. And I think on top of that, it was great just to get his feet wet, just to say like, hey, I want to show you what Major League Baseball is about. We're going to send you back down, but he's going to be back up real soon. It's going to be another couple of weeks, 3 weeks. They move some guys at the trade deadline, and he's back in Major League Baseball because he looked like he belonged in Major League Baseball. Also defensively, man, I just sort of forgot what it was like to have a really competent defensive first baseman, and he just looks really, really good around the bag at first. I love seeing him over there helping guys out and that sort of stuff. He's not the tallest dude over there at first base, but man, he moves really well around the bag.
Carlos
He's
Santana.
a good fielder. No, neither's Carlos Santana, but it's just nice to see a guy with really a lot of athleticism and agility over there at first base. So great week from Nick Pratto all around. Can't wait to have him up in Major League Baseball consistently in the lineup, hitting home runs. That'll be a lot of fun.
I think both he and Vinny Pasquantino are candidates for when it is a robo-ump to get a bump. You know what I'm saying? Because there are times when Nick Pratto will flat out say, I am not going to swing at that pitch because it's a little bit outside, and he gets called out on those quite a bit. And so I think, especially watching out for Pratto there, when robo-umps become a thing, possibly in 2024, I think you could see him even elevate his game even more.
Well, when the shift goes away next year, I'm guessing they take the shift away next year, in which case Vinny Pasquantino and Nick Pratto are going to get an even bigger bump. Now, Vinny Pasquantino especially. There are. But like Vinny Pasquantino especially, Pratto doesn't hit the ball on the ground all that often, but Pasquantino will hit their ball on the ground a little bit more, and he'll have a big bump when they get rid of that shift. But you're right. The automated strike zone, I saw Pasquantino get really screwed out of a lot of calls in this Toronto series, and he's just got such a good eye that he'll do a lot better with a more consistent strike zone that's automated at the very least. And so him, Pratto, excited to get those guys both in the lineup. You can really see what this offense is becoming when you see these young guys play. For themes of the week, obviously for me, I think
weak performers. We didn't cover the week.
Sorry, see, I was getting ahead of myself. So I don't want to talk about the bad. Negativity is bad. I got roasted by somebody. Somebody like added me on Twitter and was like, I'm unfollowing Royals Weekly because you guys are too negative. And I'm like, are we? I feel like we're the most optimistic of anybody.
The team's 20 games under 500. There's only so much optimism we can have.
I feel like the most optimistic Royals commentator out there, and yet they're like, they're too negative. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not the Royals PR team over here. Only so many ways to say that they're 20 games under 500. Mike, tell us who had a bad performance pitching this week.
My boy Carlos Hernandez, man. He just can't get anything together. 4 innings pitched. He gave up 4 earned runs. I guess in the one sense, he did eat up those innings that they needed him to in that blowout loss.
That's a real positive spin on it. Good job.
He likes 8 hits, 0 walks, 2 strikeouts. He gave up a home run. It really maybe looks like Carlos Hernandez either needs a change of scenery where a pitching development staff can actually do something with him, or the Royals need to be able to really make some wholesale changes. You and I talked last night about possibly being a guy that you could throw a cutter in there or try and teach him a cutter, and maybe that plays better than what his fastball currently does. Because his fastball, when you throw 98 or 99 and it's a bad pitch, there's a problem there, And so maybe you could turn somebody who throws that hard into a really hard cutter, and that could be a possible plus pitch. But right now, it still looks pretty bad for Carlos Hernandez. I've said this so many times in the past. Good organizations get something out of a guy like Carlos Hernandez, and I just don't know that the Royals are ever going to.
Yeah, it was rough to see him get roughed up out there. Guy throws real hard, a lot of arm talent, obviously, but they need more. They need somebody to be able. They need better pitching development people to work with him and find what his optimal mix is, find what his best pitches are, and turn some of these pitches that could be 60 grade into 60 grade pitches, because right now they're 50 or 45 grade pitches. So it'll be interesting to see what happens if they end up changing their pitching development regime with guys like Carlos Hernandez. I'm talking about Bobby Witt Jr. as a weak performer this week, not because of the way he hit okay, but because of the way he fielded. Boy, he had a real bad week defensively this week. We have a video about Bobby Witt Jr.'s offensive performance and offensive progression up on YouTube right now. Go check out our YouTube channel, subscribe, comment, rate us. It's I think, a really good video, and I'm excited about people seeing it. But what I'm talking about is defense, because it has looked really bad lately. He had 4 errors last week, and it's not that he can get to any ball. He can get to so many balls that other guys can't get to. It's that when the balls are hit right to him, sometimes he just makes a mistake. Like, I don't know if it's a mental lapse, if it's like a physical, I'm trying to rush or something, but he's just occasionally not making the plays he should make. And sometimes I try and tell people this. Sometimes for young guys, it's not the amazing plays that are tough to make. It's the making every single routine play, because that level of consistency requires a level of focus, requires it's tough. It is tough to make every single play that you should make. Sometimes it's easier to make the spectacular plays because you're a great athlete and you've practiced them a lot on your own and that sort of stuff. But, am I worried about him? Not really, because, making those plays consistently comes with maturity, comes with time, comes with that sort of thing. I think eventually he'll get there, but it is tough. It's costing. It may have cost them a game this week, actually, because that Chris Bubic start, Bubic, I think, ended up with either only one earned run or no earned runs, because Bobby Witt Jr.
none, because those two that scored were both on
short. And it was just, it's that sort of thing that you can't happen if you're going to be an elite shortstop like he's supposed to be.
And that's what made Nicky Lopez so successful last year at short, was he just made every single routine play. He'll never get to all the balls that Bobby does, but he never makes a mistake on the ones hit to him.
Yeah. So, but either way, I'm not dampered about the young team. Seeing the mistakes doesn't really make my excitement wane in any way. I'm excited for the young players that are, we're getting a chance to see and have seen and will continue to see as the season moves forward, which makes my theme of the week, the future is now. Right? Like, I am excited because the future is now for the Royals. The young hitters are coming through. The pitchers have pitched a little bit better recently. Bubic has looked good since he came back up. Singer's looked good lately. It's exciting to see that, this has been a 500 baseball team for the last month, which is exactly what we thought they would be. This is the future we thought we were going to see at the beginning of the year, and I'm ready for it. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to get more of those young guys up because, frankly, the future is now.
Yeah, and I agree with that. And that kind of plays into my theme. Don't let it hit you where the good Lord split you. That's that's what people say when they're like, leave. And it's not that I resent any of these guys.
Next up on Howdy Doody, Mike shares his folksy wisdom with the rest of the world.
But that's the thing. Like, I just want, I'm ready for those guys that we think should be traded to be traded. I appreciate Whit Merrifield for the good years that he put together for really bad teams. He made some games very watchable that, in other words, would not have been. But it's time for him to go. Michael A. Taylor, I appreciate the improvement that you've done. And Andrew Benintendi, the improvement that you've made. And you're both welcome for the Royals signing you guys and giving you the opportunity to improve your value. Go on to those other teams, finish out your contracts, and get those bigger free agent deals. I hope both of you get big money. But I want to see Nate Eaton. I want to see Nick Pratto. I want to see Michael Garcia more than what we got to see him. I want to see some of these guys up here playing on a regular basis. Let them get their lumps in. Let them make their mistakes. It's time to move forward.
It's really, really, really important that you subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whatever platform you use. Comment on YouTube. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Give us a thumbs up or a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Subscribing, rating, and reviewing helps people find the show and lets us know that we're doing something right and you want us to produce more content. Plus, Mike gets all of his self-esteem from our subscriber numbers, so help him feel better about himself and smash that subscribe button. It's free. It takes about half a second, but it does us a world of good and it makes Mike feel better about himself. Isn't that what you're really going for?
I need that right now, people.
He really does. It's dark days over there for him. So make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. We're putting out all sorts of new additional content on there. We post a ton of stuff. I've just now learned how to use Instagram, and I feel like I'm a free at last. And so, it's going to go nuts. It's going to go crazy.
I just had this image of you as an old person. You learned how to use the Instagram.
I'm gramming it. So make sure you're following us on Instagram. Make sure you're subscribing on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, all that sort of stuff. And subscribe. It will do so much good for Mike and for you to hear this podcast regularly. The 2022 MLB Draft has come to an end, almost. Not actually when we're recording this, but by the time you listen to this, it might have. There were risers, fallers, surprises, and all that sort of stuff. The first 10 rounds are now over, so we can talk about most of the players, the big money players the Royals have taken. There was some insanity with that Kumar Rocker pick. You remember that? That was just nuts out of nowhere from the Texas Rangers.
But now seems pretty
brilliant because they were able to sign Brock Porter. Good job, former Royal Chris Young there, just taking care of business in Texas. But now that we have a chance to breathe a little bit, let's talk about that 2022 Royals draft class, or at least the first 10 picks of it. We'll start, of course, at the top of day one. Day one, they selected Gavin Cross, a 21-year-old outfielder from Virginia Tech. Mike, tell us what you like and don't like about Cross and that pick.
Well, I like that Cross hits the ball really hard. He's got really high exit velocity numbers, average exit velocity numbers, like the peak exit velocity stuff. He hits the ball really hard. I don't like that he doesn't hit enough balls out of the park. So you might be thinking, if he hits the ball really hard, how do they not leave the park? He has a really flat bat path. He hits a lot more line drives than he does lofted balls to get them out of the yard. He is a good athlete. I would say above average athlete. Played center field for Virginia Tech. Probably not a center fielder long-term for the Royals. He'll probably move to right with just an average arm in right probably. But here's the thing that kind of gets me. It's all opportunity cost, right? So we had the opportunity to draft Cam Collier, to draft some of these guys that Jace Young was the guy that I was really looking forward to.
Kevin Parada also on the board there.
I wasn't as high in Kevin Parada, but Jace Young or Cam Collier would have been either one of those. I think would have been a better pick because of the upside. I think they both have more upside when it comes to offensive baseball. And so I don't hate the pick. I don't dislike it, but it didn't make me excited about anything.
See, I think the offensive upside is exciting and interesting for Gavin Cross because he has the athleticism and because he has the strength. All he needs really is a slight mechanical tweak to get that ball more lofted, and we know that Drew Saylor is good at doing that. He's done it for Tyler Gentry. He's done it for Nate Eaton. He's done it for other guys in this system. So I think there's a good chance he does it for Gavin Cross. Gavin Cross starts lofting the ball more with his – I don't want to call his approach advanced. It is advanced, or he showed an advanced approach this year, but this is like the only year we've really seen it from him, like that really good approach. So it's too small of a sample size to really say it's a real advanced approach from him. It's a good approach. He doesn't walk really as much as you would hope. He's a little bit of a free swinger there. But
yeah, it's not like a Vinny Pasquantino or a Nick Prado. It's like it's closer. I'm trying to think of a guy that it might be better.
I think Alex Gordon maybe is a better comp for his approach.
It's a thing where it's like, yes, he's going to swing at balls that are out of the zone, and sometimes, he'll even put some of those in play because he's got a decent hit tool for that.
Well, that's Edward Olivares. I mean, Edward Olivares.
Yeah, but he doesn't swing as much out of the zone as Olivares probably. So
how about Michael Massey? Michael Massey's a guy who likes to swing.
Good one.
Yeah. Michael Massey's a guy who likes to swing quite a bit.
That's a good one. Yeah. The other thing that scares me a little bit about him is, and Drake and I actually talked about this last night when we were at Kingdom Bar and Grill. He does open up with that front shoulder a little bit, so I am going to wonder how he hits against lefties, especially on breaking stuff down and away. That's a little scary to me, but that's all adjustments that can be made. So
yeah, not a finished product offensively, and that's what I think he is advanced enough that they could put him in Quad Cities in High A if they wanted to. I think he'll go to Columbia, maybe mash there for a few weeks and then go to Quad Cities. But he's the type of guy who is advanced enough offensively that you can get excited and maybe expect him to move a little quickly, but who isn't so advanced that he's tapped out. I think if they make those mechanical adjustments, if they sort of work on his approach a little bit, you're talking about a guy who could be a middle of the order bat. You hit the ball that hard, you have the potential to hit it out of the ballpark. Okay, we know that that's the case. He just needs to find the loft on it. And so I'm excited for that. I'm excited that he has a defensive floor, that that wherever you put him in the outfield, he's at least going to be probably no worse than slightly below average. Maybe in center field at Kauffman he would be, because that's a lot of ground to cover for him. He just doesn't have the short burst quickness to cover enough ground to stay in center and Kaufman, but a guy who could be plus defender in the corners. And so you're at least going to be a plus defender in the corners. You're probably going to have a good chance to hit something like 280, 290 at the major league level with 20 to 25 home runs at least. Right. And that's a really competent middle of the order bat, a really good get at 9, I think. So I'm excited more than I was yesterday. I gave it a B grade yesterday when we were covering the draft with the Royals Farm Report and the Kansas City Sports Network people at Kingdom Bar and Grill. I think I would even up that to maybe like a B plus or an A minus today.
See, I think he's more of like a 15 home run guy who, if they can add some loft to his swing, gets to that 25 threshold. I don't think he's got the consistent power and loft to get more than 15. 10 to 15 until an adjustment ways. Yeah, until they unlock it, maybe.
In the second round, the Royals went with another college bat in Caden Wallace, a third baseman from Arkansas. What do we know about him, Mike? What do you like about him? What do you question about Caden Wallace?
What we know about him is that he's a right-handed power bat from Arkansas, and he's a draft-eligible sophomore, so he's a year younger than Gavin Cross. I think he has more easy power than Gavin Cross. He gets more loft. Now, when you look at the home run numbers, they're almost exactly the same. You do have to realize that Wallace played in the SEC, with a little bit tougher competition than what Cross did. But you see, there's a few more doubles. Like the power that you watch in Wallace's bat is top notch. It's really good. The problem is the swing and miss. He's got quite a bit of swing and miss, which is why the Royals could get him at 49. And so the other thing is he plays third base. He's a good athlete, quick guy, but he hasn't had a whole lot of time at third base. So he needs some polish at third base. He's got a really strong arm, though. You know what he kind of reminds me of? The swing kind of reminds me of Jonathan India. When he came out,
that's a good comp for the swing there. I like that a lot.
Really looks alike to me. Now, Jonathan India was a much more polished college hitter coming out. And played a really, really good third base. He was just a more polished player all around than what Caden Wallace is. But, I think the swing looks very similar, and they play the same position, and the body even looks similar. He's actually the guy that they've taken that I'm highest on. And so,
I think Wallace was a tremendous pick at 49. Yeah. I think if the strikeout numbers aren't slightly higher than like Gavin Cross is, then you're talking about a guy who's going in the top 15 maybe in the first round. And so that allowed him to drop all the way to 49 but the athleticism is there, the swing is there, the power is there. I really like the all fields approach from him. He has that opposite field power. Really hits the ball well into the right center field gap. Just a guy who really you love the swing. And like Mike said, draft eligible sophomore, so a little bit younger. And you're talking about a guy with still a ton of potential. I mentioned it last night. I thought this was an A pick, an A grade from them. And I love teams. I love that the Royals are interested in taking draft-eligible sophomores who are guys who look like if they fix one thing, they're going to be top 10 picks next year. They go ahead and take them a year early when they're still draft-eligible sophomores. You work on that thing with them because you have a good hitting coordinator. You have good hitting player development.
Just a lot more resources, yeah.
A lot more resources. And you can lean into that and get so much out of them. This is a really great – I mean, it would not surprise me if Wallace ends up being just as good, if not better, than Gavin Cross because he has all the tools, all the talent. And I said this last night.
I think his ceiling is higher.
Yeah. All the tools, all the talent to be just as good, if not better than him. Could be great at third base. A really good arm on him, man. It's good. He's a powerful player, an agile player. Could be good in third, could be good in a corner outfield spot. He played outfield some as a freshman. So, yeah, I think that's just a home run pick for the Royals at 49. Got really excited after day one. I was a little less excited about some of the things they did on day two with some of their, a third through 10th round pick. But we'll talk about that here in a second. There was a real trend for the Royals overall to take college players, and it was college bats early, then it was some college pitching. Like, what do you think about their approach to take college players and then college bats specifically?
I've always been a fan, at least recently, as draft kind of things changed. The amateur player development and stuff has changed so much in the last 10 years even. But I'm a fan of taking college bats with advanced approaches. And so if you can get a guy like that early in the draft, that's what I'm like. Gavin Cross, I wouldn't say has an advanced approach, but he's got a good approach, right? And I think you can work really around that. The approach is Wallace's deficit, and it's the reason why he was there at 49, and I'm completely okay with that. I would have probably gone with a Jace Young, who has the most advanced approach in the draft at 9, but they chose to go with the more predictable defender and valuable defender in Cross, and I'm fine with that. The stuff that really makes me scratch my head is the college guys they took after Wallace. I didn't get so many of those. Like, so many of that stuff confused me because I'm like, where does he fit? Like, what is your philosophy here that you're putting him into this? Where's the continuity? And I even talked about it last night after they take those first two guys. He goes, oh, it looks like they got a plan. Like, the plan is draft these college hitters, make them valuable. Then they switch to college pitching and just take a whole run of it. It's like,
well, that could be a plan too, right? That could be a plan. If their plan is use our most valuable picks to take the thing that we can develop in hitting, right? Use our most valuable picks for that. And then, I mean, this is the plan that Alex Duvall of Royals Farm Report really advocated for them to have. Use your most valuable picks on the thing you develop well, college hitting, or hitting in general, because they do prep hitting well too. Take hitters early, take pitchers later, so that you can, because there's value to be had for pitchers in rounds 3 through 10 and even beyond that. So that's, I think, the approach that it looks like in this draft. Really, they need to do it in multiple drafts to say, okay, this is their plan, really. But, you know, it was interesting to see them switch and after day one start going a lot of college pitchers. I think that it was the best choice they could make was to take college hitters with these first two, and they did it, and I'm happy with that, right? They got two ones that I consider really good with some upside to them, and so that's great. Best approach they could take. Let's talk a little bit about that second day today. From the college pitchers that they took, they did take a few more college hitters on this second day. Mike, I want you to give me one player you really liked from day 2 and one player you did not like them taking on day 2.
Well, let me start by saying, like, one of the ideas behind that approach that you just mentioned is, and Alex says this all the time on Royals Farm Report, that there is no such thing as a pitching prospect because volatility in pitching development and drafting is so insanely high. So maybe I'm just not seeing it. I think the thing that I'm fine with that kind of approach. I just think the guys that they took, I don't know if they're the ones I would have taken with the guys that were on the board.
Right.
If
I agree with that notion. There are other guys on the board, right? And so
I thought that there were guys that you could have more to do with. So that being said, one of the guys that I did really like that they took was Hunter Patterson. Okay. He's a big, tall, kind of lanky lefty out of Central Florida. Okay. University of Central Florida. He's coming off of Tommy John, which before that, when he only got, I think, 7 starts in this year, but he had an under 2 ERA, striking out the world. I mean, he had like a 2 strikeout per inning thing going. I mean, it was really insane. High velocity fastball, has a really good changeup. The thing that kind of worries me a little bit is the command. Okay. And the fact that the third pitch isn't developed really well right now. But you develop that slider is what he throws, and you've got yourself something that you can really work with. Now, that's all halted because he's recovering from Tommy John surgery right now. But that's why you're able to get guys that look that good sometimes later in the draft. So Hunter Patterson is the one I'm really excited about as far as the stuff that he has. And I'm hoping that we can get a little development regime change on the pitching side to help work with him. The guy that really confused me the most was Mason Barnett, which was their 3rd-round pick. Right-handed pitcher. Auburn. Out of Auburn, has a deep arsenal, but he's a guy that never was able to consistently start at Auburn. Like, they would put him in the starting rotation, he'd pitch a game, they put him back in the bullpen and stuff like that. And so it's like, wait, he wasn't good enough to crack the starting rotation at Auburn, but we think we can develop and get something out of him. Like, I like to anchor on something where, hey, I can tell this guy is really good at this one thing. I actually like it to be command, honestly. If it's really command and this guy can win, but he doesn't have that either. He's really inconsistent with his command, inconsistent with his secondary pitches. Super head scratcher for me on Mason Barnett.
Yeah, I think Pipeline gave him a 40 grade for his control, which is not good. And, yeah, he's the guy I actually chose as the pick that I disliked as well. It's the only pick that they had that I was really like, no. And there were people speculating that it was done to save money. I know Alex thought that it was a money saver, and
that's what I thought.
Some other picks as well that maybe they're going to spend that money elsewhere. Didn't end up happening in the top 10, really. Well, actually, we'll have to see. There were no obvious bigger money players throughout the rest of the top 10. So, there were no high school players taken. They took only college players. And typically you save money to get some guys allured away from college with high school players. So the Mason Barnett pick doesn't make a ton of sense to me. I mean, it would be one thing if the Royals had a guy or had somebody or had a track record of developing command, because then you'd be like, hey, take all these, high stuff guys and, teach them command, and boom, we're a pitching factory. But they don't have that. They actually have the exact opposite of that. And I actually put out on Twitter, like, they're making picks as if they have this great track record of refining guys' command when they have the exact opposite of a great track record to find, they're bad at it. Guys have gotten worse with their command under the Royals minor league pitching development. And so it's a really head scratcher when you take a guy like Mason Barnett, who, flashes some stuff sometimes, but looks like he has no pitch ability, no ability to know where the ball is going, and really couldn't even find success as a college pitcher. And so, I'm a little bit curious and confused by that one. We'll see if it ends up, maybe we have egg on our face. Maybe Mason Barnett becomes the next, Max Scherzer, but we'll see. I have no idea. The pick that I really liked from them was another college hitter that they took, a guy named Hayden Dunhurst out of Ole Miss. He's a catcher, a guy who people are very high on his defensive grades. Looks like he can definitely catch defensively. And then a guy who's had some power previously, but whose offense took a big nosedive this year. Like, he probably a much higher pick if he hits the same way this year as he did last year, but, looked like an everyday catcher coming into this year. Looks like he's not going to hit enough to stick as an everyday catcher now, but, you find a way to get him back to producing offensively. And you're talking about a guy who could be a very serviceable defensive first catcher in the major leagues. I thought that was a really good value pick. I think they got him in the 5th round, I want to say. And so, good pick for the Royals. I think I'm a fan of the Hayden Dunhurst pick.
The only negative that I kind of read about him was there are some people who speculate that he has problems with elite velocity. That they can throw pitches as a hitter. You can throw pitches right by him. And so they're worried that maybe he never gets past Double-A because he struggles with velocity. I don't know. He's already a good catcher. So
did Hunter Dozier and Michael A. Taylor, and those are guys who have. If he could hit like either one of them, he's a fine player.
Oh, he's an everyday catcher in Major League Baseball. If he hits like either one of them,
exactly. And so those are guys who struggled with elite velocity too. We especially remember Michael A. Taylor struggles with it. If you play one of those premium defensive positions and you play it well, the bar for your offense is much lower. And so I'll be interested to see Hayden Dunhurst as a defensive catcher. I just want to watch him catch a game and see how his receiving skills are, see how his arm is down to second. I think he's a guy who could be really interesting for them and a really good value pick in the 5th round. The Royals get back to work with a 3-game series at home against the Tampa Bay Rays on Friday, July 22nd, followed by another 3-game set at home against the Los Angeles Angels of Uzbekistan, or is it Tajikistan, or I don't know.
I think it's Calgary.
Right now they're playing like they're from Calgary. I'll tell you that right now. Mike, tell us about Tampa Bay. Great team. We're going to get a chance to go to that Angels series. Don't forget, we're going to one of those games.
That's right. Tampa Bay is a good baseball organization, ladies and gentlemen.
Real good.
They are 51-41, which is phenomenal, but only good enough for second place in the AL East, and still 13 games back of the Yankees, because the Yankees are unbelievable right now. They're the only pitcher out of Oregon State who has a 3.22 ERA, a 1.16 WHIP. He's got a very interesting pitching profile. He throws a good hard fastball, averaging 96, but he's got a nice cutter. Averaging 91, and he likes to throw those two, fastball and cutter, which if you throw a really good cutter, as Mariano Rivera proved, you really don't have to throw anything else. He does have a slider and a changeup, but he likes to use the fastball and the cutter. He doesn't go deep into games. 4 or 5 innings is usually about how deep he goes, but that may lend itself more to a philosophy of Tampa and how they kind of manage their pitchers. So Drew Rasmussen will likely pitch against us, but that's all that we have so far. Other than that, they have a solid lineup top to bottom. They're getting good years from Jin-Man Choi and Yandy Diaz, as well as is Arise still with them? I can't remember if Arise is still with them or not. Pitching-wise, Shane McClanahan is on track to be a Cy Young candidate. He is phenomenal. 1.71 ERA, insane stuff from Shane McClanahan. Just another one of he's really the anchor of their pitching development. He's just phenomenal. Corey Kluber, a guy they didn't develop, the at the time Indians developed Corey Kluber, having a bounce-back year with a 3.73 ERA in 18 starts. So they've got good starting pitching like they always do, and they're getting enough out of their lineup to be a really good team. So
the Rays, man. It's
you can
like
count on 2 things with the Rays. They're going to be good,
even though they
no one's going to see it because
big name talent. Every single thing. They're going to be good.
2 things you can count on. They'll be good, and no one in Florida will know. So,
if the Rays are good, but nobody's there
idea.
to see it, did it really happen? Is my
Here's
question.
the team that should always be good and never is.
After the Rays, after the Rays, the Angels will come into Kansas City for the second half of this homestand. The Angels, we played them already. A super top-heavy lineup with Taylor Ward and Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani up top and a bunch of guys
everyone else
don't help the team very much at all. And so those 3 guys are 3 of the best players in baseball, and they got 6 other guys who are not very good. And so also a rotation that has Ohtani, who is great. Patrick Sandoval, Noah Syndergaard, and Reed Detmers are okay sometimes. You're talking about ERAs around 4 for the rest of those guys. But other than Ohtani, it's really nothing special from the Angels rotation. They also don't have a great bullpen, and so they've done a lot of losing. They're 39-53. That's 4th in the AL West. You really hope for more when you have the 2 best players in baseball in the world, and not a generational talent. That doesn't feel good enough for Ohtani. And multi-generational talent, maybe the best player in the history of baseball. You would expect to be better than 39-53. The Angels just have
Here's
not
the cool
been
thing,
very
though.
good this year.
Lee Summit West's own Monte Harrison should be playing in that series for the Angels. So I think so, or at least he was before the break.
Is he going to be
them.
awesome?
So he's one of the best athletes that I've ever seen play, and had an offer from Nebraska to play football. Was a phenomenal basketball player, and and his brother Shaq is in the NBA. So they, just a phenomenally athletic family. He was a first-round pick of the Marlins. I don't think he quite ever developed the baseball skill that they thought he would, but he's got power. He's got an arm. He can run. Interesting guy. They had him in left field the last time I saw. So.
Well, we'll end this week's episode like we end every episode with our Just About Outside segment, where we talk about something that's interesting to us outside the world of baseball. A lot happening in baseball right now. Especially Royals baseball. But let's take a breather from baseball and talk about something a little more worldly. Yeah, take a breath, exhale. Mike, tell us what's been happening in your life outside the world of baseball.
Toronto, these guys can't get in thing. I needed some relaxation. So Friday night, my wife and I and our son went to a friends and family night at the zoo. And what that really means is, if you pay to be what they call a friend of the zoo, you can go after the zoo has closed and get into the zoo and do some things for free and do some special stuff just for the friends of the zoo. Basically, it means I have a pass to the zoo, and I got to do.
Is this a cult?
I'm in the zoo cult.
Is this a cult? Are you in the Illuminati?
But it was really cool. The Zoominati.
Okay. All right.
It was really
the Zoominati.
Zoominati sounds like an Italian guy that hangs out in Jersey. Zoominati. But yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. We do it.
You and your elite
it was
clubs
awesome
over
because
there. Okay,
one, it's outside. Kansas City has so many awesome outside things to do. Secondly, I haven't really been to the Kansas City Zoo all that much in my life, even though we have a summer pass. My wife has gone a lot, but I haven't gotten to go, and so there's not as many people there on those nights. And so we were walking around, and a lot of times you'd look around, and it was just you and the animals. There was nobody else there. And so it was really cool to see some of the animals, really cool to be out there when it was a little bit cooler. The zoo's it's a lot cooler than it used to be, I feel like when we were kids. And so they're building an aquarium out there, which is going to be really cool. And so I like the Kansas City Zoo. I like a lot of the things Kansas City offers outside. And that was one that I got to appreciate this week. So become a friend of the zoo. It's not that expensive, like $75 for a year. And, you go 4 times, you've paid for it. So that's what we do. And you get to do special things like that. So become part of my cult. Join the Zoominati cult.
Join the Zoominati, and you will find enlightenment. All hails Orb. Well, I'm going to talk about something less culty. I'm going to talk about this beverage that I've switched to. I've started drinking. So I am what is, I think, colloquially referred to as a junkie. I love soda, and I am addicted to it. I cannot stop drinking it. And have drank soda since I was a very small child. A lot. If I told you how much, you would be like, "Are you okay?" And the answer is no, I'm not. I need to stop drinking soda, and so I've decided to switch to this other thing that is called
opium.
Poppy. That's the
I'm not
brand
mistaken.
name. There are other types of this.
Isn't that what they make out of?
Yeah, it's called opium. No. No, yes, that is. The brand is called Poppy. There's other ones like it called like Ollie Pop is one of them. You probably heard advertisements for that sort of thing. It's basically like soda, but it has way less sugar than soda does, and way less of other types of things. But it tastes and has the same sort of feel as soda. And so I found one that's like an orange soda that I really, really like. There are other flavors of it that I like too. And it's just like, it's changing me. I like feel better as a result of not having all this syrup in me and stuff like that. And so I've been drinking it, feeling good about myself that I'm not like, chasing the dragon. And so, I'm really happy about that. Yeah, if you're like me, you're addicted and you can't kick soda, maybe try something like Poppy or Ollie Pop or something like that. It's the closest thing I've ever found to things that actually taste like soda. Because before this, I tried a bunch of stuff where people are like, "Oh, this is just like soda." I'm like, "This is garbage. This is nothing like soda." You take soda out of your mouth. Like, I'm especially a fan of Dr. Pepper, so I used to have people be like, "Oh, you should drink this kind. It tastes a lot like Dr. Pepper." It tastes nothing like Dr. Pepper. Okay, because that's garbage. But this is the closest thing that I've ever found to something that actually tastes like soda that isn't nearly as bad for me as soda. I think it only has like 2 to 5 grams of sugar as opposed to the like 13 grams or something like that that soda has. And so I'm excited about making this transition. They are expensive, like really expensive. And so you might have to like ration or limit yourself, but that's good anyway. Drink more water, like all I need is that little fix of Poppy. It's like and I feel a little bit better throughout the day. And then I can, drink water for the rest of the day.
It's wild how
hydrated.
You became so addicted to pop and I did not. Like that never happened to me. I really don't drink that much
drink
pop.
Pop
like
all the time.
I will have, even if I go to a fast food restaurant or somewhere else, I'll get a pop and I rarely ever drink more than like 2 or 3 drinks of it. I just don't drink that much. It's weird. I drink booze. So
yeah. Okay. I was gonna say, let's go through your cabinet.
That's the
Captain Evan
I
Williams
booze,
over here.
You're addicted to pop.
There we go. And I'm the one who's going to get diabetes, I'm sure. And so, I'm glad I found it. I'm glad that the Royals are going to be back playing again on Friday. We'll have some stuff to talk about. I'm glad that they took some interesting guys to the draft. I'll be interested to see who they take on day 3. This is a reminder, subscribe on YouTube, like and comment on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. We're going to be putting out tons of new content. Mike has this awesome video in the works on pitching development. I'm really excited to see that. Make sure you're following us. We're putting out a ton more content. We'll be back next week,
and go
as we
Royals.
are every week for you. But until then, be good to each other.